Cinderella. Cinderella. There once lived a man who had a kind and pretty wife and a beautiful daughter. Sadly, the man's wife died soon after their daughter was born. A few years later, the man married again. His second wife was not kind and pretty, and she already had 2 daughters who were so selfish, proud, and greedy that they were known as the Ugly Sisters. From that first day they moved in, the Ugly Sisters were cruel and unkind to their stepsister. They made Cinderella clean the house from top to bottom, do all the cooking, and clear out the cinders from the fireplace. She spent so much time doing this that her stepsisters called her Cinderella. One day the king and queen decided to hold a grand ball. The 2 Ugly Sisters couldn't believe their luck when the very next day an invitation arrived. On the night of the ball, the Ugly Sisters paraded their new clothes in front of poor Cinderella and asked her to tell them what suited them best. After they left, Cinderella sat on the little stool near the fire. "Why are my sisters so cruel to me?" she thought. "I do everything they tell me to do around the house and more. They never give me a kind word or even smile at me." She felt so unhappy, and she began to cry. Suddenly, a beautiful woman carrying a silver wand appeared right in front of her. She seemed to have come from nowhere. "Who are you?" gasped Cinderella, a little frightened. "Don't be scared. I am your fairy godmother," said the beautiful woman. "What's the matter, child? Why are you crying?" "I would have loved to have gone to the ball," wept Cinderella, "but my stepsisters didn't want me to go." "Don't worry," said her fairy godmother kindly. "You shall go to the ball. But first, I'd like you to bring me some things. I need a pumpkin, 2 mice, and the biggest rat you can find." With one wave of her silver wand, the fairy godmother changed the pumpkin into a golden coach, the mice into 2 magnificent white horses, and the rat into a coachman. With another wave of her hand, the fairy godmother changed Cinderella's ragged dress into a ball gown made of the finest satin and silver thread. On her feet were a pair of beautiful glass slippers. "Now go and enjoy yourself," said the fairy godmother, "but be sure to be back before midnight, for when the clock strikes 12, everything will return to what it was before." Cinderella stepped into the glistening carriage and was whisked through the dark streets until she reached the palace. When she entered the ballroom, everyone stared. They had never seen such a beautiful girl before. The prince fell in love with her as soon as he saw her and danced with her all evening. She was having such a wonderful time, she forgot all about her fairy godmother's warning. All of a sudden, she heard the clock strike 12. "Oh no," she thought, "I must leave." She tore herself from the prince's arm and rushed out of the ballroom. The prince couldn't understand why this lovely girl had suddenly run away. He searched the palace for her, but couldn't find her anywhere. But in her rush to leave, Cinderella had left behind one of her glass slippers. When the prince found it on the palace steps, he immediately said that he intended to find and marry the girl whose foot fitted the glass slipper. He would visit every house in the land until he had found her. The Ugly Sisters became very excited. On the day that the prince was going to visit their house, they made sure to wear their best dresses. When the prince arrived, he held out the glass slipper and asked which one of the sisters would like to try it on first. "I will," cried one of them, but as soon as she tried to push and squeeze her foot into the slipper, it just wouldn't fit. Her foot was far too big. "Give it to me," said the other sister, and grabbing the slipper tried to put it on. But her foot was far too big too. However much she pushed and tugged, she just couldn't get her foot into it. Just then Cinderella stepped forward. She had been standing quietly in the shadows, and no one had noticed her. May I try? She asked shyly. You! Cried the ugly sisters. Of course you can't. Now get back to the kitchen where you belong. Be quiet, ordered the prince. Of course you may, he said, turning to Cinderella and not recognizing her. Cinderella sat down and put the slipper onto her foot. It glided on perfectly. The ugly sisters gasped in amazement. I recognize you now, said the prince, smiling. You are the girl I fell in love with at the ball, and you are the girl I am going to marry. Cinderella replied, I loved you the moment I met you. Cinderella and the prince had a glorious wedding. She forgave her sisters and never had to wash up a dirty dish ever again.